Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there are some common factors always, and I think the things that we've picked here are the ones that tend to come up more frequently. Ultimately, I think, again, the good way of thinking about it is that, you know, we're not treating symptoms, we're treating human beings. So it was interesting because yesterday somebody asked, well, okay, if I come in with, you know, with chronic fatigue or ME, but I also have endometriosis, you know, how does that fit in? And to me, the obvious answer is, well, you know, of course, you know, that will be taken into account because that's part of you and your, you know, physiological makeup. So again, it's not, you know, you can't look at the person through a pinhole and just kind of pick the bits that you like. You've got to, you know, you've got to look at the whole of it. But stress and adrenal health, I think, is an interesting one because it kind of fits, I would say, at some of the more foundation bits of the pyramid, certainly well before the mitochondrial function becomes sort of apparent or becomes the main issue that needs to be treated. Because if you look at the predisposing factors, again, you know, whether it's looking on the nutrition or kind of physiological side of the immune detox or structural, or whether you're looking on the psychology side, all of those create stress in the body. You know, as far as your body is concerned, whether the stress is physiological or something that's kind of more environmental, external, sort of coming, you know, head stress, as I'd call it, I suppose, for want of a better word, the physiological biochemical processes that stress kicks off is exactly the same anyway. And it's your little adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys that react to stress. And initially, they pump out more stress hormones because that helps you to deal with the stress. It helps you to deal with that saber-toothed tiger. And as Alex said, you know, at that point, basically what the stress hormones do, they literally divert blood flow away from your digestive organs. Because quite frankly, you know, if it's a life or death situation, whether you digest your previous meal really isn't that relevant. Same thing with the immune system, really not that relevant if you cut yourself a little bit when you run through the bushes to kind of try to get away from the tiger. You know, you can deal with that later. Right now, you just need to, you know, save your life, get away. Long-term stress becomes problematic because that's what we are dealing with most of the times nowadays. You know, hopefully for most of us, it's not that kind of heightened life or death type stress, but it can be pretty constant. And, you know, it's just that trickle effect that is just drip, drip, dripping on the background there. So your adrenals initially produce more hormones. After a while, they were never built for long-term use. They will start getting fatigued. They're less able to produce hormones. At that point also, you know, everything in body, you can't look anything in isolation. So if you're pumping out lots of stress hormones, that happens in preference to a lot of your other hormones. So for example, through stress, women start having, you know, problems with their menstrual cycle. You get much more, you know, really horrible PMT often. You know, you can start getting sort of hot flashes even well before you're meant to. All sorts of lovely things that can be attached to that. The other thing, of course, so that's the sort of adrenal health part on the one corner at the bottom. So then the digestive health, that was the other bit, because of course by now, you know, blood flow has been diverted away from your digestive organs. You're not digesting as well as you were before. Stress hormones also have a negative impact on your beneficial bacterial colonies in your stomach. And about 80% of your immunity is linked to the health of your friendly bacteria in your gut. So suddenly it's that immune system there as well that becomes very obvious. So now you've got this nice little merry-go-round that if your immune system starts playing up, because possibly you're not digesting particularly well, your body's reacting to the larger particles that are now coming through, that's creating stress, strain, inflammation, so your adrenals are being sort of kicked and pushed again a bit more, where, you know, again, your digestive health suffers, and, you know, you can make it go around quite happily for quite a while. And again, in terms of, you know, and that I see where that sort of little merry-go-round has started is individual to people, but once you create it, it's quite capable of running all by itself. You don't have to do a great deal. The thing obviously is, again, from my side, what we can do is we can test the adrenal function. We can find out where they are on the scale of great to completely exhausted. And we can support, we can support your digestive system, we can support your immune system, we can support your adrenal health. But again, I think the really important part for me is you take a step back, you look at the bigger picture and you say, okay, how did we get here? Is there some other type of stress here, more from the kind of emotional, psychological side, that we also have to resolve? Because until you do that, all you're doing is you're helping to sort of paddle to stay still. Yes, great, definitely, I can support the symptoms. We can give you digestive enzymes to get your digestion better. But if that little trickle effect of the stress is still there, then, that's, again, you're not building on solid foundations. But the whole of this, I hope, what I'm trying to say with this as well, again, this is something that would come way before mitochondrial function, for example. Because, again, if that little merry-go-round is going on, that's going to continue to stress and strain your system. And, mitochondrial function and treating that isn't going to create anything, longer lasting.
Although coming on, I think one of the things about the mitochondrial side, which I think is really important, and I think it's really helpful to talk about it just for a few minutes, is that who here has experienced what's called the delayed fatigue response, Emmy, which is basically where you'll find you do something more than you normally do, and you're basically fine doing it. You're fine for a couple of days, and then you suddenly crash. Who has had that kind of experience? Yeah. So most people, and that's something that up until about 3 or 4 years ago, when primarily through Dr. Cheney's work in America, but also then Sarah Myhill and then us as an organisation in the UK, started to really explore this and start to work with this, that this is really the piece that explains that on a biochemical level, what's actually happening in the body.